Alright guys, today we're going to be showing you how to upgrade the Mazda BT50. So this is for any model with the non-navigation 2012 and onwards. And we're going to show you how to replace the factory stereo. We're going to be using an aftermarket stereo today. We're going to use the Kenwood mechless unit, which is no CD, no DVD. It is the DMX 7017 BTS. Now you can use it any other stereo on the market that's a double DIN and do this upgrade. We're going to show you how to remove the dash, how to fit the stereo, how to wire it up. Now we use these Kenwood ones because we like them. They've got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. They're really affordable and really fast and really reliable. Now with this kit, we're going to sell this as a full kit, but we're also going to sell the fitting stuff separately on our website, carboncarsystems.com.au, if you want to check it out. And we're going to make it this easy for you guys. So we're going to put the plugs and harnessing all together so it's plug and play. And we're going to make that as easy as possible for you and show you in the car. Now, first up, we're going to go through some of the tools you're going to need to actually fit this up. And there's not that many. It looks like a few, but you can get away with anyone, a friend that has tools, if he's a tradie, whatever, should be able to do that. So let's step you through the tools that you're going to need. So come down here and let's have a look. All right, so we're going to need a couple of things. We're going to need a screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver. We're just using it here on a drill. We are going to use a drill and a drill bit just to drill a hole to run our USB cables out nice and neatly. We are going to use some non-marring pry bars, so these are so that you don't scratch and slip and mark anything. We are going to make pry bars available on our website now. They're going to come in a kit of 2. We're going to use a little bit of cable, that's just for routing cables. Some tape, so this is TESA tape, this is cloth tape, really cool tape. We're going to use a soldering iron. For those guys that don't buy the kit from us, you'll probably need that, but we're going to do all the soldering pre-ordering of the kit for you guys to make it as easy as possible. You are going to need a 6mm and a 7mm socket, a couple of little picks here, and that's just going to be to pull some clips off. We're going to need some cutters as well, possibly even a knife and some cable ties. But that's really all you're going to need to fit this. We do have a light and some strippers just in case, but probably not going to need that. Now, we'll step you through some of the parts you're going to have here as well. So we're going to have in the box an antenna adapter. This is for your AM, FM. You're going to have a little shroud here for your double DIN head unit. That's just going to fill the gap nice and neatly. We'll show you how to fit that. You do have this little buzzer. So this is for you guys out there that have the factory tub and have the factory reverse sensors. This will retain the buzzing, okay? Not going to be 100% necessary on all cars. If you've changed the rear end like this car here, this BT50, you're not going to have factory reverse sensors, so you can get a reverse camera. So we've already mounted a reverse camera on this car, and we'll show you how to wire one of them at the front. But mounting a reverse camera is pretty generic, so we're going to show you that part. We have other videos on our channel, and that will show you how to do that. Now, this is going to be the new Fascia panel. It's actually going to come with the new hazard button and new lock and unlock buttons, and that's all going to plug in and have a loom at the back as well. So we're going to pre-do that, all ready to go for you guys. And this is the new harness that's going to interface with the factory screen up the top of your dash and power all the new unit. So that is the entire kit that's going to come. It's going to come in a giant box because this Fascia is huge, but it's really easy to pull the car apart. So we're going to show you that now and make it as easy as possible. Let's go. And we're going to show you how to get the factory stereo out. Now the first step is make sure you turn your car on, make sure you got no CDs in the unit, because once you pull it out you won't be able to get those out again. Now this piece actually comes out as one solid piece. We're going to use 2 non-marring pry bars because that's the simplest way and it's not going to scratch the dash. And what you want to do is you want to start up in the corners, the top left and right corners, and you're just going to sit your pry bar in there nice and neatly. So just going to slide that in, and you'll notice that it just slides under without marking anything, nice and neatly. And we're going to, like I said, I'm going to make this available on our website. We're going to do left and right, but what you can do is you can slide them down and it will pop the stereo up. And you can actually do it on the top left here. You'll see there's a little bit of a gap, and as you slide it forward, it will pop the stereo out. And that's not going to mark anything because these are plastic, okay? So it's really easy to do. Once you do that, it sort of gives you enough to sort of leverage the stereo. And you got to make sure you pull forward down the bottom here, because this bottom section actually has to come out first. But the easiest way to do that is to actually pull it forward, give it a bit of leverage, and that will pop the section on the bottom out. And there you go, that will pop that air conditioning area out. Now on the back of the air conditioning area, so just make sure you don't scratch any of the dash, there's 2 plugs, little locking tabs on the top of them. You're going to press them in and you'll be able to pull them out. Very easy to do. Put that out on the bench. And we're going to move this one forward, and as we move this forward, there is actually on the back of this one plug here as well. So the locking tab's on the bottom of this one, little black and red unit there. So that is the fascia panel out, and it's that easy. And we're gonna undo 4 bolts now. These are a 7mm bolt, so either side of the stereo and either side of the screen up the top here. So quickly get a socket set to do that. All right, so this is a 7mm socket, like I said, and these will come off really easy. Just undo them, and you're just gonna make sure when you undo those, you don't drop them. Just be careful. There's 2, just put them in a safe place, probably in the center console in the cup holder. And on the top here, I'm gonna undo those ones as well. You probably just shorten your socket so it's easy to get off without hitting your window. You don't want to damage your window. And that's the bolts out. Okay, so you'll notice this will actually come loose now, so we'll be able to unplug the loom on the back that we're actually going to get to, and you'll be able to pull this stereo out into the front. So we'll continue to pull this out. On the back of this unit, you get your main power plug. So we're going to press that. It's got a locking tab on the top of it. Undo that, and then we're going to flip the unit over. Now it's important not to put too much leverage on these. This is the AM/FM antenna, and we found these are a little bit fragile, so don't put too much pressure. But on the bottom there's this little locking tab, so you're going to press that in and pull it off. Okay, so just be careful of those. They're a really flimsy factory design, so that's just something to note as well. Now the top screen, we're going to lift that up, pull that forward, and on the back of that you've got a locking tab on the side. Press that, and that should release a little bit tight, and that will unplug as well. So just put those components somewhere safe, and what we're going to do is loom up the factory looms, run some USB cables for the Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and we're going to run an external mic because the Kenwood's coming with external mics, and most good quality aftermarket stereos will come with an external mic because of voice quality and sound quality. And I really like the Kenwoods, and most other units like Pioneer and Alpine, etc., will allow you to adjust your call quality in the actual phone, in the unit itself, while you're on the phone call. So you can turn it up or down, different acoustics for different car, and it'll sound really good. So that's why it's an external mic always. So we're going to quickly run that up here into the center behind the rear vision mirror, run it down the A-pillar and up into the top here, and we're going to show you what to do with the USB as well. All right, so we're going to run the microphone now. And the easiest way is to actually undo this handle, and these are little rubber seal here, so you can actually use your pry bar to just pop those off, just stick it behind the actual gap in the rubber seal. They're really easy to come off, and they're flexible, so you can't damage them. And these are actually going to be a 6mm socket, so we've got a 6mm ratchet here, and pop them off. They actually take a little bit of winding. And there's one of them. There's 2. And then you're just going to put your handle somewhere safe. And that's the handle off. We're going to pull this pinch weld off, which is the rubber seal that goes around the door trim. And then you'll be able to pull the A-pillar forward. Okay, so you can actually pull it right out, but you saw me leveraging near the bottom there. So because the clip is actually lower down, if you leverage your hand there, it's just going to pop off nice and easy. And then you can put that somewhere nice and safe as well. As we run the microphone, so this is the external mic that comes with the Kenwood. It's just a little thing, very easy to run. We're going to run it under the glove box and up into the center console. It's easy to just run down this A-pillar, tape it with these factory looms down under the glove box, and there's some looms under the glove box. You want to tape it to those or cable tie it to those, just so it doesn't hang down in the passenger footwell, and then run it up into the center console. So this, we're going to just take our double-sided tape off. Very simple and easy to do. Stick it on the windscreen in the center. So you line it up with your rear vision mirror, stick it straight on, nice and straight. Put the microphone behind the roof lining, and we're going to sit that up there nice and neat. And this is a little bit of a loose windscreen, so we are, little roof lining, sorry. So we're going to leave it a little bit of length there so it doesn't fall down. We're probably going to put a bit of tape around that and tape it up into the roof lining, just so that doesn't ever fall down. Now, once you've run that, we're going to tape this down this A-pillar. So we're going to go grab our tape now, and we're going to use TESA tape, which is a cloth tape we'll make available on our website as well. And we're going to run that down into the A-pillar, down into underneath the glove box. And we can film that from the other side for you guys so you can see that. That'll make that easy enough. Grab some tape. This is on the passenger side of the vehicle. We're going to show you as you run down that A-pillar, you've got this little cover here. We're just going to go under the glove box. Easiest way is to pull the pinch weld off out of the way, pull the kick panel forward a little bit, go underneath there and around this section, and you'll be able to get the cable right underneath, okay? And that will actually hold it in place. So there you go. It's actually out there under the glove box, and there's actually some cables you can tie it along here, along the bottom, and then come up into the center console. It's very easy to do. And once you put that A-pillar back on, so what we'll do is we'll grab that. So here's the A-pillar. The A-pillar has little locating tabs down the bottom that just mount into the dash. You can actually see them. We've taped up our cables now, so that can just push back on, line up the little clip, and the little clip will push into place with the pinch weld off. And if you taped it all correctly, it should go on nice and neat without some cables in the way. There we go, nice and neat, and you can push your pinch weld back on. So that's the microphone, pretty well run. A little bit loose there. There we go. So that's all the pinch weld back on, nice and neat. You're gonna put those 2 bolts back in and put your handle back on, make sure it's nice and tight because people hang onto that. And we're gonna tape this up and run it across. Now, next step is, in this glove box, you actually have the USB and AUX on some of the newer models. So we can't actually adapt this on this car because there's no adapter that they make available. So we're gonna show you, we're gonna pop that out. We're gonna run the new cables through there and we're gonna show you that as well. So here we are underneath the glove box, and we've run our microphone here, but we also have a reverse camera cable, which we ran earlier for this gentleman. And now we're gonna show you how to do the USB. So the easiest way to do this is actually undo the glove box, and we're gonna pull the glove box down, and it's as simple as holding from the bottom and just supporting the glove box and pulling forward. And you'll hear it pop off, okay? And then it sort of comes loose, just squeeze the top of them, and that will actually sit down very easily. So all that's done is we've just popped these little clips off on the rounded section. That's just a little hinge, okay? Now this is the USB section, but with this area open and exposed, you actually can run your cables nice and neatly. We're just gonna pop this glove box back on now, so it's actually in place. And that will sit nice and neat, and you can tape your cables up along the looms there so we can run them up in the center. So this is the factory USB and the factory AUX. We're actually not going to use them anymore because the new aftermarket unit's going to come with them. So we're just going to undo those. And we're just going to pop that forward, but we're actually not going to use the AUX because you don't need to. We've got 2 USBs, you've got Bluetooth, you've got CarPlay, Android Auto, so it's not something that's actually going to be used. And we're going to run one USB in here because the Kenwood has dual USB, which is a cool thing about it. So we can actually have the cable run through this, and we're going to run a separate one into the center console. It makes it really easy to use. So we're going to use the gray cable for the Kenwood unit in the glove box because that is the secondary USB, which will actually do audio, charge any phones or anything else that you want to put in there. And what we're going to do is run the male section through there. And as you can see, it's a little bit tight. And what we're going to do is just open that hole up a little bit. Once we open the hole up enough to get that through, it's not going to damage any of the factory clips. So if you ever want to return it to normal, it will still push in there. And this female section is actually just going to sit out there nice and neat. And he can actually pull that out, the gentleman, if he needs any length on the cabling as well. So easiest way, you can probably use a knife or drill it if you want, but that's not going to necessarily be really neat. We're going to use a soldering iron. I find this is probably going to be the neatest way. We're going to heat the soldering iron up. It's going to melt around the edges just to make it, keep it in that square sort of shape. If you're not that confident with a soldering iron, probably use a knife or something, or even just drill it out, but then it's going to be rounded rather than squared. So as we get here, it's going to get rid of this metal, solder off there. We're just going to extend this hole a little bit. Just enough to get that female or that male end of the USB through there, and keep that shape as well. So if we ever do need to return it back to normal, we can actually do that as well. So we'll just melt it a little bit there. We're probably going to clean that up with a little bit of sandpaper or a fine file just to make it a little bit neater. But we'll keep doing that, and we'll just keep trial and fitting it just to make sure we can get that USB through. So we're almost there already. So we're going to do that a couple more times, then we're going to neaten it up and push that through. Then I'll show you how to route the cables up as well. So I'll quickly do that off camera, but that gives you the idea anyway. Pull that out a little bit, and as you can see here, this is what we're aiming to do, is get that male version through. Make sure the male version through, plenty of length there, and it's going to go through the factory positions here to give you that nice, neat finish that's going to look factory and not cut any extra holes if we don't have to. That's actually just pushed it out of the clip there. So, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to clip in the AUX one plug back into place. Reason being, it'll just hold that little section in place a little bit stronger. But as you can see, plenty of looming, and this is going to run up to the back of the head unit. Now we're going to loom up the microphone. Just run it behind this glove box here quickly. So sorry, just passing it. Sorry to block the camera. So we have our microphone, rear camera, USB, and these are all running up into the center. So while the glove box is down, you can just reach around here and run them out the center. All right, so give it a bit of length there. Just got to pull that through. Microphone, USB, and nice and neat there. We have them all out the center. So that's all our cables run that we're going to need. We do have to do one more USB just into the center console, which is going to use for these Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. And this section here, you can actually just push this back up. That will clip into position, and then you have your microphone there. So we're going to tie those cables up though, make them a little bit neater behind the glove box here, because you can see there, it's actually pushing against the cables. So we'll just make that a little bit neater so it sits normal, and we're done there. Now I'm going to show you how to do all the looming and all the plugs in the center, and then we're going to show you how to mount the stereo up, which is probably the most time consuming section, but really easy to wire up. So now we have to run another USB into the center console. The easiest way on these, because they don't have a factory location, is to come out the bottom here. Now we're going to drill a hole just up in here, and we're going to do that from behind the stereo so it's nice and neat, because you're never going to see that hole. And then we're going to run the USB out that section, and then the gentleman can actually pull his cable in and out in this center console and tuck it away nice and neat should he need to be. The reason we don't use any other adapters for this vehicle, extension cables, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, very susceptible to current drop. So if you're running a lot of extension cables, a lot of length, they actually won't work properly natively. So we're going to drill from behind here. We're just using a large stepper bit on our drill bit. It's quite large. Doesn't need to be that big. It's just what we use here in the shop. It's only going to be big enough to fit the male end through. So if you can get it the male end size circle rather than the female, it'll be better, because we can come up through the front and up, and it's never going to pull through, because if you pull it through, you're going to lose it for the client or for your own car. We're going to unplug one of the plugs here, the cigarette lighter, just to move the cables out of the way. And we're going to line up the center. So there's a lot of sections here, left and right, and you can actually see the center section. So we're going to line that up with the rear, and we're just going to quickly drill a little small hole from the behind, from top down. Line that up. Really easy to do. Now if you're drilling, just make sure you don't go too far down and hit your dash if you're using any drill bits that are extended. And we'll try that out, make sure we haven't drilled too much. And we're almost there. One more step. This is why we use a stepper drill. It's just easier to gauge sizes. We can actually go a little bit more, a little bit less. You can measure it up, hold that up against your drill alongside it, you'll get the size. There we go. All right, there's our secondary USB into the center console. That's going to be nice and neat for the client. And as I said, it's going to sit under there. See, it's not going to push through. It's actually going to get stuck there as well. And he can actually use that readily. Very easy to do. Okay, now we're on to doing the rest of our looms, and we're going to plug all this in. We're going to plug into this top screen. A couple of looms down the bottom here. Very easy to do as well. Let's grab the loom. Behind this center section, the stereo section, you're only going to have two lots of cable. So one's going to be your AM/FM antenna. So we're going to show you that first. Very easy. This is a new aftermarket antenna size to the factory one, and this is just going to plug in. It'll only go in one way, and that'll clip in. That'll give you AM/FM. Like I said, be careful of that. They're a little bit sensitive. The next step is going to be your main loom. So we wired these and we pre-wire them for the Kenwood units as we send them, just to make life easier for anyone that has a Kenwood unit or orders from us. It makes life easy to install yourself. It's only going to be one plug. That plug plugs directly in. And it's going to come with this big box. Now that's the interface box for the steering wheel controls. And you're going to get a couple of loose cables, and I'm going to show you what they are. Now this is the main power harness for the Kenwood unit. We've pre-wired this so you can watch DVDs, CDs while you're driving. That's no problems. You are going to have four and a bit, sorry. And they're going to be these three different colors and a plug. Now it actually tells you, we're going to give you instructions in the box. We'll quickly run through it. The purple and white is going to be your reverse trigger. So if you're running a reverse camera, it is going to plug into that. It's going to tell the screen to reverse and change the screen. It's also going to power up your camera. The light green one is a handbrake wire. If you want to use it off the handbrake, which means your DVD CDs will only work when your handbrake's up. Most people don't use that. And the pink wire is a vehicle speed sense wire. So some of the units like the Pioneer Avics or top of range will run a speed sense wire to make your GPS a little bit more accurate. So that is there if you want them. If you don't need them, you can cut them off. We are going to be using the reversing trigger, but that's all that is. Now these two cables here, this is stereo sound for an AUX input. Should you want one, you can buy a special adapter, which is RCA cable to AUX input, okay? Now we're not going to use that because the Kenwood doesn't have it, doesn't need it. You got dual USBs, Bluetooth, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, so really not necessary. And this 4-pin plug here is just for this little buzzer. Like I mentioned, if you have the reverser and optical sensors, you can actually just plug that in. It will only go one way and you can mount that up. Now, all these we really aren't going to use. We're only going to use the reverse trigger today. So we're going to wire that up and show you that. We're going to leave this buzzer out because it's actually not needed. Now we have the reverse trigger wire. So on our camera, we have this. This is going into straight at the back of the Kenwood unit. That is the signal cable. It will plug into the reverse camera port on the Kenwood when we go to finalize the unit. But this little red trigger is the power running to the back of the camera. And generally some cameras have an earth as well, so you can do an earth, which can just go on any piece of metal in the car. Kenwoods don't need it. Kenwoods actually earth through the shielding of the signal cable. So it's really, really cool. Now that's just going to plug into that purple white wire. Okay, we're actually going to wire that on. There is a little bullet terminal, so you could use a male bullet terminal and wire that in. We're going to quickly solder that onto there, and we're going to loom up these other wires because we're not going to need it on this install. So like I said, not all installs are actually going to use that. So we'll quickly wire that up, and then I'm going to show you where the other plugs go, because there is a plug. We have to adapt this top screen. Reverse camera done, and now the last step of the wiring that we're going to do is we need to have this top screen plug come into our new adapter for the steering wheel controls. This is going to give all the firmware and software into our box, and then we're going to run up there. So the way that's done is we have this new cable. This is actually going up to the screen now. We have to remove this old cable and bring that down into the box. So essentially into the box and then out to the screen. Easiest way is to move this cable out of the way, because when we put our new stereo in, this cable can actually hide behind the dash. Now you can do this two ways. You can use your wire snips. If you have them, you can actually snip those little cable ties, or you can put them around it and pop it up. Or if you had a pry bar, something like this, you could pry it up if that's easier for you. They're actually just little lugs. They're not that hard to get out. So give them a bit of a lever. They actually just press in, so you don't, not very hard to get out. So as you can see there, they just press in, very easy. All right, and you can actually pop that right down. There's one here even. There we go. So that's nice and loose now. Now this cable that we've just pulled out will go into that box. All right, there's only one way it will go in, so that is not the way. All right, so that's the old cable will go into that box, and that's going to hide out under the dash here where we have lots of room, so the cables and the stereo can go in nice and neat. Now we have to run the new cable up. Now the reason we're going to run this, we're actually going to run this through the inside, not the outside where we were, because when we put this new larger stereo in, it's going to come really close to the edges, and when we're pushing it in, it's really tight for people to do, and you can actually damage the cable. So I find it's easier to go up and around under the dash. Now, up the top, there is a little hole around here. I'm going to bring the camera around. I'll see if we can grab it. So in here, just here, there is actually a hole. So I don't know if you see it, I'll try and just filter it. There's actually a gap, and that comes in down and under the stereo here. And we're gonna run our wires through there. I'm just gonna pass this back to Colin. So the easiest way I found to do this, and it's not that hard, just grab a piece of cable, any old cable, and push it through that hole and down. You can stick your hand under, and you can actually grab it, okay? So you'll actually be able to feel it. So there you go. There's the cable. Now, we're just gonna tape the new one that we have to run. Is this one? It's the one coming out of the box. I'm gonna tape it to that cable, and we're gonna pull it up through that hole at the top. And that's gonna keep it nice and neat behind the stereo so that we're not gonna damage anything. And it actually makes our install so much easier. So there it is there. Pull the cable up, and there we have it. So that will give us plenty of room. I'm gonna pull the old cable out then. There we go. And that will plug into the factory screen. So I've got the screen outside the car at the moment. That will plug in the factory screen, mount that back up into position, and our cables down the bottom here, as you can see, they're all wrapped up behind the stereo here. So when we try and push this new double DIN unit, which is a little bit deeper into the unit, into this dash, we can actually hide these cables right down the bottom where there's tons of room down here. So you'll actually be able to sit, give you an example, down the bottom here like this. There's tons of room. We're just gonna plug that straight into the Kenwood. Very easy to do. That's very much the easiest way to go. We do have a GPS antenna to run, which we can do last, which is just for the Apple CarPlay Android Auto on the unit. It's just a new GPS, which can mount anywhere here because there's no metal above it, plugs into the back of the unit, or even just sit it on top of the unit. Now we're gonna try and mount up the unit. So we're gonna trial fit that because the brackets are adjustable to make it sit nicely in the dash. So we're gonna show you that on the bench, how we would do that. So we'll quickly show you how to plug that new screen in. This new screen has a locking tab. It'll only go in one way as well. And as you start to push it in, that locking tab will move. That will click into place, okay? So it actually moves itself. And there's a little locking tab on top of it if you want to release it. And it'll pull itself back out, in and out. So very easy. And that can mount back up. As you can see, the clock will still work. And it's important that you do this because it will retain some of the vehicle features. You can actually still change the date, the time, some settings on the vehicle as well. And we're going to do up our 2 bolts onto that as well. So I've just nipped them up for now, in case we need to pull it back out again, but I might do it a bit tighter. I don't think we'll need to pull it out. And that's all back into place. Now, down the bottom here, as you can see, I've moved all the cables out through the bottom of this section, and I've just tucked them all behind this loom in the back here. This is actually flexible, so you can put everything down the bottom out of the way where it's not going to rattle, and keep this section as clear as possible. Now, we have to cut a little bit of the dash. It's not that hard to do. These little tabs on the left and right, I'm going to cut them off. We're just going to use snips here, and put on the front and just snip them off. All right, and just get your rubbish out, so we'll grab that in a minute. Snip either side. All right, that's fine, we'll grab that one as well. And then you can actually file them down, so that's a little bit messy. We're just gonna file that down a little bit, and that's gonna give us our room for our double DIN. We're gonna trial fit it. We may need to take some of this metal or some of this plastic off to actually get the mounting in nice and neat how we like it. We're gonna try it like this first up and show you how we go. Okay, so we've got 2 brackets. We're on the bench now, passenger and driver side. They're not really marked, but you can actually see on the bottom of them there's a slight angle. We're going to use that as the base, so it's got more of an angle down because that'll give us a bit of angling when we put in the dash. We're just going to guess where this is going to go at this stage because we don't know. So we're just going to nip it up with the bracket on a generic spot. And what we'll do is we'll show you the finished locations as we work it out. We're just going to sit it there to demonstrate how you would trial fit this. And this is really probably the hardest part you're actually going to do on this dash. It's just trial and error. It's really not that hard actually, but it does take a little bit of time in and out of the car. Make sure you're both sides the same. And then once we're in the car, we can undo them a little bit, adjust them, and it's going to sit in dash, trial fit it. And the way we trial fit it is we get this dash panel and we're going to sit it on. So we're going to make sure we don't put any of the clips, the locking clips in place. And I'm actually going to do this without the cables plugged in, just so we can pull it in and out. And we're just going to try and line it up so it's perfectly centered in the dash. We're going to mount that in the dash, trial fit this on, and then adjust the screen, and then tighten it up, okay? So not too hard, let's go do that in the dash. Just slid it in the dash. We're just going to make sure on the left and right there's actually little locator tabs where we pulled out our 2 bolts. We're just going to set it up in that location at this stage, and you could tighten that up, all right, just to make sure you got it in the right location when you put it in, just in case there's a little bit of movement. We're not going to tighten it up yet because this looks way too deep for my liking. So we're going to trial it just to show you what would happen. So there we go. So we've got all this, mounted it up. We're going to sit this in the location that we need. All right, as you can see, it's definitely too low and it's sitting deep as well. So what we're going to do, that's where it's actually going to sit. We're going to get that to come up and we're going to bring it out a little bit as well. So, and then there is a little shroud that goes around that, but we've got to really center that up. But that's just trial and fitment. So we'll pull that off and we'll show you what our final result is. We're going to do this a few times just to make sure we get it nice and neat. All right, after doing a bit of trial fitting, we actually decided it has to come a bit higher. So what we're going to do is just take our knife and we're going to slice this front end section off the dash here that's behind the stereo. You can actually slide it through. You can see here, it's not too hard once you get it moving. Just sort of trim this back a little bit. Use a fresh blade and just be careful as you're coming through. And you can do that quite neatly. There we go. That's going to be almost there. There you go, and that's going to be nice and neat. And that's going to give us a little bit more room to lift the stereo higher. We found when we had it in, we couldn't get enough height to get it centered. So that will probably fit nicely, but we can always trim that back more and more because that actually doesn't do anything. It's still got plenty of strength and structure. In fact, you can almost cut this whole section out. We might even have to trim it down a little bit to give you a bit more play in the stereo because the locating tabs on the left and the right. So you just need these 2 sections to stay there and they're still rigid from the rest of the dash. So even if we remove this section, it was actually doing nothing anyway. So we might need to remove that. We're going to try it again. All right, that is almost in the correct position in the car now. So we're going to trial it with this center shroud on it just to make sure it's 100% before we put it in. Now there's a little rubber seal you put around the outside of this unit. That's actually going to hold the shroud in place in the car. So trying to make it so you can see what we're doing. It's just a little flexible rubber seal. Goes around the outside of that shroud. And that will push into the center here. All right. So that's just going to make it sit nice and tight, nice and neat, give it a bit of flex. And that's how the unit is actually going to sit. So we thought we'd show you how to do that quickly. And now we're going to trial this one last time, hopefully in the dash, and it's going to sit up nice and neat. All right, so since we're at our final trial stage, we are going to tighten up these bolts just to make sure it's in the correct position. And what we'll do is if this fits correctly, we'll show you how we mounted the brackets on the side. And let's go. All right. So, oh, there we go. That is very, very close. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it so the top sits out a little bit more because you see it's a little bit shallow there, but the bottom is sitting nice and neat. It's very centered. We're going to bring the top out a fraction because that actually sunk in as we tightened up those brackets, but just to make sure it's nice and flush. But that's looking pretty neat. So we'll quickly do that. Then we'll show you the side of the unit and show you how the bracket's actually mounted. All right, one last modification. We are going to actually delete these little nibs because they're making it really hard to get a nice fitment. So we're just going to slice them off. There's 2 bolts are going to hold it in place. You just do them up tight. It's going to be super tight. But we found we couldn't get enough vertical movement as we're putting it in, so we can get the spacing to come out perfectly. But then to actually get that really nice fit, it wasn't coming up high enough. Those nibs were actually just stopping us. So now we can actually lift it a little bit and get a bit of gap and a bit of spacing there. So it's going to sit up nice and neat. Put it upside down there, sorry, but yeah, you get the picture. There we go. Yeah, it's going to give us plenty of room. So we're going to try that once more. Okay, so There she is. This took us a few goes in and out, but it's nice and neat. That's gonna sit like that. So you can see it's nice and centered all around the edges. It looks nice in the dash. It's not gonna move around or anything like that. So we're gonna clip this in. We first have to move over the little shroud up the top here, because if you come closer around the front, you can see we haven't got the sides covered at this stage. So we're gonna get that off the old one and put it on this fascia, put the clips on, mount it up and plug her in. And as you can see, that's all bolted up. So we're going to show you on the bench quickly exactly how we put the positioning of these brackets, because that will make your life so much easier when you're doing this. We had to pull it in and out about 3 or 4 times. Although not a hard job, it can be a very frustrating job. My suggestion is buy a mechless unit like this Kenwood. If you haven't already bought this one from us, which is an awesome unit, the DMX 7017 BTS. If you're not going to buy this Kenwood unit and you're going to buy another one on the market, whatever it may be, I suggest buying a mechless one where the screen doesn't flip, because honestly you're going to be there all day. Because the next step, if you had a flip down screen and you push that button, it flips down and it catches on the fascia or the shroud, man, you're just going to have all day trying to fit that so it's perfectly fitted. This one here, the screen never has to flip down. So, and it's a matte screen as well, so it's not going to get all that sun glare. So I suggest this unit, it's a really good one, inexpensive, like really this whole kit. These units, like they retail, I think $7.99 full retail for this unit with Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, so your maps are always done. So I strongly suggest that. But let's go over the bench, I'll show you how we did those brackets. Okay, so let's show you the positioning that we decided to do on this unit. So here's the bottom of the unit, top of the unit, so just make sure, flip around, zoom in there for us, Colin. And as you can see, this is the vertical upscale of the brackets, and we used it, it's basically about halfway through the unit for the bottom screw, and you can see just guideline it up with these little holes. So this is on the Kenwood unit, so again it's going to be different for any other unit, but you can always measure from front to rear here and get a bit of a measurement as well. That might make your life easier, because the front of the unit to where the brackets start is a good indication. In fact, we might get a tape measure for you guys and show you. But when you do either side, you just follow the same guidelines. Use the same holes halfway through, a little bit of the hole showing on either side, and a bit of gap there, okay? I'll get a tape measure quickly and we'll show you that actually. It's gonna save you a lot of time. Okay, so to give you a guide, guys, to the front of the bottom section, you got 45 millimeters to the front of the fascia. That's from the bottom section. And again, same as up the top. Now the way you can tell the top section that we did, this section is larger than the bottom. So that will be the top of the unit. So approximately 1 inch long, whereas the other one's about 3/4 inches long down the bottom. So that will give you an indication, guys, of how you're gonna do it. 45 mil back to that, 45 mil back to that. Get the 2 screw holes that line up, because as you can see, none of the others will line up. And that will make your life so much easier. And that's ready to fit into the dash. So let's quickly change over the paneling, the shroud, and we can fit that up, ready to go. Okay, so we have to do one last thing to this fascia panel and make it fit. Well, 2 things actually. We're gonna remove these little clips that are all over the place here. We're gonna use these little picks to do it, but you probably use multiple different ways. You're just gonna put them behind there and clip them off. Just pop them forward. They just sort of lock into place with the little bit behind there. There we go. And that will get the clip off, okay? And you just push them onto the old one. Now that we've done all our trial fitting, they'll actually go around and you'll be able to fit them up. Not too bad to do, it takes a bit of time. We're not gonna show you every single one, but just sort of use something small and get them off easily enough. Just a little bit fiddly, but that will give you an indication of what you've got to do there. Go around, do all the clips, and they will lock into place. We do have to move now the vent and this shroud over to this new one. So this, I apologize, I didn't mention this earlier. This is a T20 torque screw, and we're going to use this to undo the air vents. And there's just 4 bolts on these air vents. Actually, there might be one behind there. No, just 4 bolts on this air vent. Quickly remove those, and then we can move that over. Now, when you're moving this over to the new one, make sure on this new one you have these plugs already plugged in, because once you put the vent on, it does make it harder to get to those plugs. So I suggest doing that firstly. Oh, there's 5. I apologise. 5 screws. If you find out where they are, you can actually see on this new one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there is 5 screws. I'm just going to pop it off. Make sure your cables are out of the way. I'm going to pop that into place. Okay. I won't go in through and do all those, but we'll do them up off camera. I'm just going to do them up. They'll line up perfectly. And as you can see, air vents. Now, next step, top shroud. What we are going to do, there's probably 2 ways you can do it. We're going to slightly drill these sections out on the sides because they're actually plastic welded on. One way you could do it is you could actually heat them up using a soldering iron like before. We showed you could melt that, but we're just actually going to use a big drill bit. We're going to burr it away, that melted bit. There we go. And that should come off. We're just going to basically make it as easy as possible. If we do that, it should pop off. There we go. Now, that's all done. So we suggest when you put this back on, you can use a washer to hold that into place, because if you drill it too far or it snaps on the way through, you're just going to use a washer to hold that back in place. This is going to line up into the top little locators first up. And there you have it. So that will actually tighten up into the bolts on the side. There you go, had to click into place. And we're going to tighten that up using a washer, or you could use a big screw if you want, but we're going to use these factory ones that come in the stereo, because that should actually line up pretty neat. So as you can see there, if you didn't burr away too much, that would actually hold even without a washer. We're going to hold a washer for that one because it did snap, and this one actually, just to make it a little bit tighter. And once we've done those up, it should look pretty good. Yeah, there you go. Nice and neat, and that is ready to go in now. So do all this. If you're going to lay them down flat like this, put a cloth down so you don't mark the front of your fascias, and she'll be ready to go. So we're just going to grab some washers. So last cable to do is the GPS receiver. Now I'm going to mount this up the top behind the factory screen, just because it's going to be tight for space behind this factory stereo or aftermarket stereo when we put that in. So we're going to mount this up here. There's plenty of space for those cables to go. I'll fix that in a sec. Now we're going to go through the same hole that we went to. This one's going to be a little bit easier. Just take the grey port, push it in there. You gotta stick your hand behind and grab it. Just gonna keep all the cabling so there's not too much behind the stereo. And when you push it in, it's gonna make it nice and easy. This is double-sided tape, so you can actually just stick it anywhere up the top there. There's got a bit of room. So we're just gonna have a look around the back here. Oh, just stick it down. Yeah, a bit of room there. Back shelf. And then we're gonna leave those cables in behind there. That's not going to cause any problems, so we're just going to spread them out. There's plenty of room. You can actually tuck them away nice and neat. Pull our cables through, tuck them in. You probably do this with the screen out at that stage if you wanted to do it earlier on in the piece, but there you go. So that'll sit nice and neat, and the paneling will still go on. Now we've got all our cables, we're ready to put our stereo in. So here's all the cables out the center. We'll get it shorten this one up a bit. You want to make sure you've got majority of them up and out the top here, on top of the loom that's in the back there, and keep the chunk of it down the bottom. Reason being is when we put this stereo in, there's not going to be a lot of room, so you want to keep this as minimal as possible. All right, so we're quickly going to do that now. We're just going to quickly answer our front door and come back to this video, but we're going to show you that real quick. Once you finish your testing, we are going to put the fascia panel back on. Very easy to do. We just need to keep this cable out of the way. So make sure, starters, it's not in the way of the air vents as they're coming in. So you want to make sure it's forward away from the air vents. So just keep it pulled forward here. And then keep it around the side of the unit, away from the 2 clips that are going to go in. Easiest way to do that is just to press it under the unit, and that will hold it in place there, nice and neat. Pull that through, gives you a bit of cable to press it out of the way. And you should be able to push that on. So it'll all clip on in one go. There's 1 bit, 2, easy. Then we have this cable at the bottom. That's just going to be for our hazard switch and our button for the lock and unlock. And that will go into that black and red cable that you had pulled out earlier from the original version. So there you go. Test it out, the hazard lights and the locks are working. Yep, locks are working, very, very good. And then just clip your aircon back in, and that's the entire unit. So I'll quickly grab that one and we'll whack that in as well. All right, so that just clips in, and push that on. And hey, we are finished. Just make sure all your AC's all working, everything's working before you go away. Everything's clipped in nice and tight. You might leave a few little finger marks on there, just wipe it down with a cloth with your oily fingers, but it's a nice matte black finish. And there is the finished product. So that will do reverse camera, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, 2 USB. So you got the one at the bottom here, very discreet, so you can actually tuck that away if you don't need to get to that out of the way. Very easy. You have a spare one there in the glove box through the factory location. External mic. We are just going to put a bit of tape on that so those cables don't come down. Just put a bit of double-sided tape up in the roof lining, and she looks really, really good, much better than the factory one. And like I said, you can retain all those factory settings up the top there and adjust them still as well, so that's not going to be an issue. You won't get the radio information up there, but like I said, you can go through the clock to display any of the settings you have there and adjust anything you need to adjust, so you can still see me moving through the menus there. So very, very cool upgrade, very affordable. Hey, maps are always updated. Google Maps and Waze if you have Android Auto. Apple CarPlay allow you to do voice activation, SMSs, voice guidance, voice answering, tons of different apps. You can get MyTuner Radio for DAB+ if you want it, and heaps of podcasts and Audible for books and things like that. So great upgrade. That's the Mazda BT50 2012 onwards. So anything with that factory